Back out here at the Oliver tractor again. Gonna do a couple things today. Gonna change the oil and gonna top off or at least add 5 more gallons of fuel to try and help with minimizing condensation. And also I want to make sure I don't want to run out of fuel. I've been running this thing back and forth trying to get that backhoe out of the woods. I also brought a chain with me today, so if I get the oil changed and top it off with some fuel, again, not top off, but add more fuel, I might try and go back down there and lift that backhoe out of the woods. Well, I wrestled the lid off of my waste oil container here because it's going to be a lot easier to deal with that big opening on the back of the oil pan. Okay, time to take this big huge drain plug out. And it'll be interesting to see what's in there. Capacity for this crankcase, according to the owner's manual, is 5 quarts. Let's see what we got. Consistency of water. This is cold. The engine's cold, by the way. So you can imagine with the engine being cold and it coming out like that. I mean, that's probably a lot of diesel in there. That's thinned it out, and some water. Hopefully more diesel than water. Not that it's a good idea to have either one of those in there. Alright, ooh, look at that delicious sludge coming out. Yeah, somebody needs more roughage in their diet. Well, there's some goop still coming out of here, even though I've had it draining for about 10 minutes now. So I'm just going to let that sit and drain. There's some stuff even clogging the hole that came out. It was so thick I got it out with my finger. I'm going to turn my attention to this oil filter. Love to change this oil filter. I mean, it looks like it's been in there a while. The top of the oil filter is all rusted. It's a spin-on filter, so it's not one of those pesky cartridge deals I got to deal with. I mean, that just it's got yellow paint on it from the last time this thing was painted. I mean, that filter looks ancient. That's just sad that this is not seen an oil filter in that long during its life. But there's a number right on it. Let's see, it says White Farm Equipment Lube Filter 100125ASA. Wonder what Napa can do with that. Oh yeah, another thing. Check that out. That's about halfway up that bucket. It's a 5-gallon pail, so we get about 2.5 gallons drained out of there. So what did I say? 5 quarts, which is 1 1/4 gallons, and we get about 2.5 gallons? Yeah. Well, Advance was able to cross it to a Purolator number, but it's going to take them 2 days to get it. Let me try another auto parts store down the road here. In the meantime, I want to talk quick about the hydraulic system and what I've learned. First off, I called a place called Zimmerman's down in Pennsylvania. Took me a second to remember the name. The reason why I called them is because they know a real lot about Oliver Cleat-Track crawlers. And the thing about Oliver Cleat-Track crawlers is that a lot of those were outfitted with wear backhoes and trenchers. So anyways, they actually have some documentation for the original wear equipment. And I called and I talked to a guy there. I forgot his first name. Real nice fella. Last name Zimmerman. And anyways, I was talking to him about my problems and everything. And he was telling me, he says, yeah, he says, your relief valve, he says, on the loader, he says, you can have a relief valve. And he said, you can have either one or two styles. He says, you can either have a large acorn nut that you remove, and there's going to be an adjustment in there. And that's going to be your relief valve adjustment for the loader valve. Either that, or he said the other style would be where you don't have the acorn nut. There's just a big nut that you remove, and what you're going to find in there is the spring and washers. And he said that they actually mess with the thickness of the washers to change the setting on those. That's probably an older setup than this. This, apparently, I've got the acorn nut. So I'm going to look for, he said there should be another one of these on the backhoe. And he said, based on what I told him, he said, it sounds like I got a couple of things going on there. He says, sounds like one of my spool valves isn't centering correctly so that it keeps engaging, one of the cylinders. And that cylinder's probably at the end of its reach, and it's continuing to try and push that cylinder. He said, at that point, my relief valve should be opening up and relieving that pressure that's building. And that doesn't appear to be happening. So something's wrong with the relief valve in that that trencher. So when we get that out of the weeds, hopefully we'll be able to get a better look at that. As far as the hydraulic schematic, he said he doesn't think he has one, but he said it's pretty straightforward. And then when I looked at this a little more closely, I realized, yeah, I had already determined that this bottom larger diameter hose here, line right here, is my suction. If I look back, that actually goes into a T. The bottom, it goes into the bottom of the relief valve. So that's fuel that's bypassing that relief valve, gets dumped down into that suction line, goes back to the tank. That line right there on the bottom goes over and across, comes up right here, goes through the filter, and it's filtered before it's dumped back into the tank. So this is your return. The reason why I know this is the return is because A, it's into the top of the tank, not the bottom, and B, it's going through the filter. And you're not going to have the filter on the pressure side in a hydraulic system. I actually, in the multi-hoe, they actually have a filter on the pressure side. And let me tell you, it's not a spin-on canister, because this wall of this canister would explode from the pressure that's involved. There's very low pressure here because it's on the downstream side of the system. Okay, I also asked him about where I might find a port to put the pressure gauge on, and he said you're not going to find a port. So he suggested you just put in a fitting and add a port on the pressure discharge here. So what I'm going to do is I've got this nipple already in here, and I've got this nipple here that I had, and I know what size that is. So I'm going to take this with me, and I'm going to go get a T and an adapter fitting, and I'm going to make up something so I can thread in my hydraulic pressure gauge right here to do all my testing. So I think I'm going to take a run down to the store, see if I can't get the oil filter, and while I'm there, see if I can't get the fittings to make up my little test jig. I'd love to take the old filter with me before I go to the auto parts store just to make sure I can match it up. Problem is, I really wish I had raised the loader before I did this. Now I can't start the engine and raise the loader because I drained the crankcase. Now if I top off the oil and start the engine, now I'm going to recirculate my clean oil into my dirty filter, which I'd rather not do. And that's kind of a negligible amount, I guess, compared to the whole scheme of things. If I have to, I'll do that. But let me see if I can't get it with my giant channel locks. Well, that's weird. All I was doing was kind of crushing the canister and not turning it at all, and now it looks like it's almost like popped off of the threads. Huh. It looks like the outer part of the canister is just completely failed and broken off the inner part. And all of a sudden I heard more fluids coming out there, so it must be because I broke the seal. So now I can see from this angle I should have been grabbing onto it from underneath here on this rim. That's much better. Alright, let's see if I can get it out. Huh! I've never seen anything like this. This is not any kind of oil filter I've ever seen. Boy, I hope that guy was right and that this crosses to a Purolator that you can get. Because if this is some kind of funky oil filter that's really hard to get, I'm going to be screwed. See a couple of gaskets on here, and then take the gaskets off, and you can see it's just got like a it looks like the top of a canning jar lid. And that just screws. Well, that's interesting. There's like no oil in that. Anyways, well, the engine hasn't been running, and it's been vertical this whole time, so I guess it drains back down into. Oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. What the hell did I just do? I just threw the stupid gaskets in there. I knew the new filter's going to come with new ones, I'm sure, but now I got to fish those out of there at some point. All right, anyways, where was I? So that's gonna, the new filter's going to thread right into that. Oh, look at that. That's disgusting. Look at the sludge in there. Well, it took a little bit of driving around, but ended up finding an app that had a filter in stock. This is the Gold Series, a 1700 filter was supposedly what it crossed to, and I had the guy check it before I drove all the way out there, and sure enough, he agreed with me that it looked like the top of an old mason jar sticking out of this thing. So that's the right filter. So this thing, this engine's not gonna know what to do with itself. Its first new filter probably in 10 years, maybe more. Who knows? Well, I'm gonna clean out that cup there. The clear gunk I can see in it. There's a clearly amount of sludge in there. I'm trying to scrape that out with a screwdriver and some paper towels. Well, instead of two thinner O-rings or seals like the was on the original one, there's one big thick one. I'm going to put a little clean engine oil on that before I screw it on. Okay, it's clearly more than 5 quarts. Again, like I said, it's about halfway up this pail, and it's a 5-gallon pail. I don't know what the full mark is on that pail, but so it means either the crankcase was overfilled or the 5-quart number that I pulled out of the owner's manual is incorrect. It was strange because for capacities, I couldn't see a difference between. It didn't seem to call out a different number for diesel versus gas. Usually diesels have a bigger sump and require more crankcase capacity. But it might be that maybe they're using, maybe Waukesha used the same block to make a diesel engine. Didn't change much, I don't know. Well, we're gonna find out. I'm gonna start out with 4 quarts. Well, I don't see any place on the engine where there's a fill point for oil, so I'm assuming that it's this extra large mouth dipstick opening. It's a combination oil filler cap and dipstick right here. So I'm gonna need a funnel, to say the least. I wish I brought my long skinny funnel, but I don't have it. Let's see if I can't figure something out here. I picked up this oil. This is all Walmart SuperTech 15W40 for diesel engines. I'm going to use this stuff. It's 2 gallons, and I want 4 quarts to start. I also have this that I run around with in the truck in case I need to add oil in the truck. This is about half full. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to top off this container with this, because this is 1 gallon. If I top this one off, I'll have 4 quarts, and I'll dump that in, and then I'll check my level. Yeah, that little funnel is not going to work. I can't get it at a good angle. It's got too small of an orifice. It's just going to make a mess, so we're going to improvise. There we go. Oh, it actually doesn't fit inside there. It's just a little bit too big, but I'm hoping that just keep it resting on top there. Well, let's see. All right, I'm not going to start with a full gallon because that's going to make too much of a mess when I go to pour it. So I'm going to dump half of this back into the big. Yeah, it's working well. So that's 2 quarts, roughly. I do believe 5 quarts is correct. I just wiped off the dipstick, but when I dipped it just now, it was about halfway up between those 2 arrows that say working range. So I haven't run the engine yet. Once I run the engine and it moves some oil into the oil filter and other places, it's going to drop that back down, and that's probably going to make up for the, that's going to make the 5th quart. It's going to take care of that. I may have a little bit over 4 quarts in there now. I wasn't exactly precise on that second half fill. I went a little over halfway in that bottle, but 5 quarts looks about right. So I'm going to add about 1 quart more, and then I'm going to run it and recheck it.